Welcome to the Speak with People podcast. My name is Jason Raitz. I'll be your host, and this podcast exists to help you improve your communication skills. Whether you communicate one-on-one, to a team, from a stage, or from behind a screen, we know that when we improve our communication skills as leaders, it exponentially changes everything. It improves our relationships, it improves our leadership skills, and it improves our business skills. So let's get ready to dive into this next episode. Well, how do you master the art of communication with your boss? Whether you're aiming for a promotion, you're seeking feedback, or you just want a deeper connection, you want to build a stronger relationship, you got to know how to communicate effectively with your boss. It is absolutely crucial. Well, this is what we're talking about on today's episode of the Speak with People podcast. Well, welcome. I'm so excited that you're here and for the start of this brand new series called Communication in the Office. Now, years ago, oh my goodness, when was this? 2007, maybe 2008. I was working with a bunch of students and we were playing with a giant earth ball. It was about 10 feet tall, filled with air. We're bouncing it up and down. I went up to bounce, and as I hit it, it kind of, it bounced me out of proportion. When I landed right on my ankle and it snapped. It was the worst. I knew right away it was broken. All of these kids, thought I was just fooling around. So they're like running to jump on me. I'm like, get away, get away, get away. Next thing I know it, I'm in an ambulance, and then I have surgery and pins and needles and all this kind of stuff. It was a riot in the opposite way. But what happened was I spent the next couple of weeks on my couch, and somebody introduced me to the TV show, The Office. Now, many people I've talked to over the years, you're either in one of two camps, right? You absolutely freaking love The Office. And cards on the table, I am in that camp. I love The Office. I have watched that TV show so many times. I should be embarrassed telling you how many times I've watched it, but I'm just not embarrassed because I've watched it so many times. I could tell you different character nuances. I love the writing. I love the character arc. There's only a few things in the whole series that just drive me crazy. And, maybe we'll talk about those throughout this. But what I want to make sure is I don't alienate those of you who don't resonate with the TV show The Office. And so we called this Communication in the Office because many of us are going to work every single day in an office. Many of us have spent years of our lives working in an office. There's a great movie with Robert De Niro and Anne Hathaway called The Internship. Or maybe it's called The Intern, one of the two. I think it's The Intern. And Robert De Niro is a retired executive, and he decides after he loses his wife to cancer or death or something, he's going to go back in the workforce. So he interviews for an internship with a fashion and clothing company that Anne Hathaway started. And this company's just, exploded with growth. They've got all this stuff going on. And they decide to bring on these senior interns. And so hence Robert De Niro's character starts as an intern. And he just slowly but surely just wins everybody over in the office. And at one point, his character and Anne Hathaway's character is there late at night eating pizza. And she starts to ask him about his career. And he begins to tell her that he worked for the phone book company and he was there for 40 some years. And then it dawns on her, wait a minute, wasn't this the building where the phone book company was? And he says, yes, absolutely. For 22 years, my office was right over there. And then for 26 years, my office was right over there and it overlooked. Some of us are in that boat, right? We've gone to the same building for how many years? A day after day after day after day. Some of us work remote and we're zooming in on, all the time. And we've got meetings left and right. We are always dealing with communication because we're a part of a team. And so that's why we're doing the series. We want to get to the heart of some of the best skills, the best tactics, and the best way you can communicate so you can win in your career. Because I believe without a shadow of a doubt, the biggest roadblock that holds many of you back, that has held me back before, is my communication. When my communication wasn't effective, when it wasn't healthy, when I ran from conflict, when I decided to do things that, the team didn't agree with, and I just forged my way through and forced them on. Yeah, there's so much to learn about how you communicate to the office. And if you're a regular listener to this podcast, I can't thank you enough for listening, because we want to help you, help me, help all of us become stronger, more effective. I hope that you're challenged to be an exceptional communicator, that your one-on-one skills are exceptional, that your team communication skills are exceptional, that your stage skills are exceptional, and your screen skills, because many of us are communicating on Zoom and trainings and FaceTime, are exceptional. That's what we want. And so this series is going to be amazing. We have some amazing guests, published authors, amazing leaders who are going to dive into some of these issues. And we have some fun things planned, which I can't wait to tell you more about. And if you check out our social media, we're going to do some fun things with a couple of different moments from the TV show The Office, and address them and see if they happen in real life. Because things like office drama, gaslighting, toxicity, how to communicate with your boss, how to communicate so you don't go around your team, all of these things, fuzzy communication, all of these things matter in the long run. And so that's why we're doing this. And so today we really want to dive in with this first episode of the series and talk about, how do you master the art of communicating with your boss? Wow. I mean, for some of us, holy cow, we're aiming for a promotion. We want feedback. We want stronger relationships. We want to know how to communicate effectively. But our boss scares the living life out of us. And so how do we move forward when we're scared of our boss? Or maybe our boss is the type of boss who leads out of fear and control and forces and is aggressive and passive aggressive. And yeah, you got to learn how to deal with that. But are there some skills? I can remember my first job. Well, my first kind of in a building job. My first job was, I worked construction with my dad and his partner, and we were on job sites and built decks. I love that. But then I went and got a job at Ponderosa. It was a buffet restaurant. We called it Ponderosa. It was horrendous. Whatever you do, do not go to a buffet restaurant. And if I could say this, after working in the restaurant industry for 6 years, don't ever send your steak back. Just eat it the way it came out, because cooks sometimes, no offense, cooks, they get a little ticked off. Anyways, that's free advice. But when I went to work at Ponderosa, my dad said to me, hey, one of the best things you could possibly do is make your boss look good. Look for ways to take things off your boss's plate and their shoulders, and just do them to do them. Don't try to be a brown nose. Don't try to kiss their butt. Don't try to just work hard, show up, be there before everybody else, stay to the end, be reliable and dependable. And wouldn't you know it, all these years later, I could say that probably most of my bosses would have some good things to say. There are a couple, and I probably will talk about them in this series. There are 2 bosses that I had that I specifically left, organizations that I loved and jobs that I loved, because I could not work for them any longer. And so I'll lead this conversation off with that. If you're in a toxic environment and you've tried everything, and maybe the safety's not there to go to HR, maybe the safety's not there to be able to talk to your boss one-on-one, I'm not going to be the leader that says, just hold out, just hang in there, because you're losing life. I lost many, many months, many, many days of my life that I had to deal with the toxicity and the stress, because when a boss leads out of fear, that's why our next series after that is Lead with People. We did that series last year. We're bringing it back again. We're going to interview 18 of the most amazing leaders from around the planet. I mean, we got leaders from the globe who are going to be speaking into our leadership. But if your leadership is one where you lead out of force and control and fear, and then you communicate that way, and if your boss is in that way, I'm sorry, get the hell out of there. Like, there's just no reason to be there. And I know for some of you, you're like, but it's security, and I've been here for 7 years. I've been here for 17 years. I get it. But the reality that they're going to change, and especially if it's not a safe culture where you can bring those things up, safe in the sense that if you did go and address it with your boss, there wouldn't be retribution. There wouldn't be, moments where they take it out on you in front of the team, or if you can't go to HR, or maybe you already have, you've had multiple conversations and nothing changes. Get out. Get out. I'm sorry. But if you are in a safe culture and you want to have exceptional communication with your boss, then let's dive into it. Because the reality is, the more effective your communication is with your boss, that can lead to powerful things in your career. Let's name some. It could lead to promotions. It could lead to more responsibility. It could lead to raises. It could lead to different opportunities. It could lead to different companies taking a notice. It could lead to speaking opportunities. It could lead, I mean, there's just, the possibilities are endless. And the people in offices who truly have effective and healthy communication skills are fewer than you would possibly imagine. I know some of you are shaking your head as you're driving, because you probably work in a place where you've come across people who just do not communicate very clearly. You always have to follow up with them. You never know what they're thinking. Or maybe they say things to you like, does that make sense? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? And so let's talk about, what some of those healthy, effective communication skills you need in the workplace. Okay. So let's talk just a few. One, you got to have the ability to approach people. If you're sitting on something and you 3 days ago could have just walked over to their office, you could have picked up your phone. You could have, instead of sending an email, you could have talked to them face to face. You got to learn how to approach people, and you got to approach people with your dukes down in a healthy way. And you got to learn how to have that conversation. So you got to approach people. One, you got to learn incredible follow-up. I think we're in a follow-up pandemic. We're in an epidemic of follow-up in the workplace, and we've got to learn how to follow up. I'm constantly coaching leaders that when I take them through my executive leadership communication coaching to document everything, because you're going to have conversations with coworkers and bosses that aren't going to go well. There's just going to be some negative conversations coming your way. And so document those conversations. Have a document. On 9/3, had a conversation with Daniel. Daniel said this to me. I told him that wasn't true. Document all of that kind of stuff. So you got to be able to approach people. You got to follow up. You got to be thorough in your communication. When you send an email, make sure you send it to all the people who need to know. And this day of like leaving some of the people off, I mean, I'm telling you, information builds trust. So if you inform people of what you're doing, where you're going, how you're doing it, you are going to build trust with the organization. If you have a lack of information, if you have a lack of sharing, you're going to break that trust. And so inform those people. And then follow up. Do the thing. I know we talked about follow up for a second, but when you do follow up, such a great principle we've all learned, but we need to hear it again, is to under promise and over deliver. Under promise. There's nothing worse than over promising and not coming through on it. As I think about that right now, there's a client who's waiting on a worksheet that I need to send today. And I'm not done with it yet, because I'm going to film 3 back-to-back podcasts, and then I'm going to get the worksheet done. But honestly, it should have been to them yesterday. And so even for me, I'm always like looking at, okay, yeah, that I needed to be able to do better and work on. When you inform people, when you follow up, when you approach them, when you deal with stuff right away, the effect is massive. Now, there's giant consequences of poor communication, right? With your team and your boss. Like, there's potential misunderstandings, there's missed opportunities, there's career stagnation. I mean, have you ever had any of these misunderstandings, missed opportunities? Yeah, I have. I worked at one job once where I was having some conversations with someone about possibly joining their organization, kind of in just a dream world. What would it be like if we joined together? What would it be like if I came on board with your team and we figured some things out? It was dream world. I really liked my job. It was an absolute dream world kind of conversation. Well, here's the principle that you need to know when it comes to communication. Nothing is confidential anymore. Nothing is confidential. If you say it to somebody, even when you say, let's keep that between you and I, it's not confidential anymore. So don't do that. If you don't want somebody to know something, do not say it at all. Do not put it in a text. Especially don't put it in a text. If you're talking bad about your boss, you're talking bad about a team member, and then you text that to somebody else, do you know how easy it is to screen share it and send it to somebody? I mean, goodness. So we know that there are giant poor consequences for lack of communication with your boss, with your team. So let's talk about a couple strategies to win with your boss. One, you got to understand your boss's communication style, right? How do they like it? If you go back a few episodes, we did a whole podcast, and we'll put it in the show notes, on what's your communication style. We talked about 4 different styles. And if you know your boss's communication style, you can go to them and communicate in their style. And so do that. Figure out their style. You got to proactively seek stuff from them. Like if you're just the person who's like, well, how come my boss will never talk to me? How come they never follow up? You don't want to overdo it, but you want to be the person who's regularly asking for feedback, regularly asking for questions. We've talked about the TED acronym on here a ton. Ask open-ended questions if you don't understand something. T, tell me more. E, explain what you mean. And D, can you define that for me? So go to them. And then lastly, I mean, you want to win with your boss. Here's the strategy of all strategies. Keep your boss informed. Like even if you're sending them a million emails, send them until they tell you not to. But you got to keep the boss updated the most. When you start shying away from sending them information, that's when trust breaks. So a few essential communication skills that you're going to need. You got to increase your active listening. And we interviewed 2 amazing leaders on here about adaptive listening. I'll put that podcast in the show notes as well. But we've got to adapt to their listening style. Not everybody listens the same way we listen. And so use every technique that you can to increase your listening style. Use those TED questions. Sometimes you're going to have to be assertive without being aggressive. And so, if they've missed another one-on-one, it's time to go knock on the door and say, hey, we have this on the calendar. I know your schedule's crazy. I just need to know what you're thinking, be able to have the kind of stuff. And then you have to have empathy and emotional intelligence. I mean, you just absolutely have to. You gotta recognize that your boss is a human being. You gotta understand their pressures and their goals. If you've never held positions on the org chart that are higher than the position you've been in, the responsibility gets heavier the higher you go. And I fought against that for years until I sat in different seats all the way up, and the responsibility is just heavier. So have empathy towards your boss. So couple key things to do to win with your boss. Avoid complaining without solutions. Avoid complaining without solutions. If you just want to go in and have a gripe session, then nothing's going to come of that. But go to your boss with solutions, not just the problems. Frame the issues and encourage like some problem solving and some collaboration. Bring the answers to them. Again, we talked about this a second ago, but steer clear of the overpromising. One of my fatal habits in leadership is I say yes a lot, and then I get into it and I'm like, oh my gosh, this was heavier than I thought it was. So steer clear of overpromising. Again, there's dangers of overcommitting and underdelivering. So set those realistic boundaries and, communicate them. And then do the last thing, like resist the urge to vent. There's a great Office episode where Michael's is at Pam's desk at the very front, the reception booth. And Michael's talking about, well, I need a raise. And Pam's like, yeah, a raise would be nice. And he says, what's that? And she says, yeah, a raise would be nice. And he's like, Pam, if you're not happy with your current salary, go talk to HR. Like he just totally turned it on her and was like, Captain Jerk. Try not to, vent as much as possible to your boss. It can be counterproductive. There are healthier ways to deal with it. So a couple of, key action steps before we leave. What is one way that you can win with your boss? What is one way? Are you sending the follow-up emails? Are you bringing a list of questions to the one-on-ones? Are you making sure they're in the know the first thing that happens? Are you asking for their advice? Those are incredible things that you can be doing. I would love to know some of yours. Would you email me, jason@speakwithpeople.com? I'd love to have this conversation over in the Facebook group if you're not in the Speak with People community Facebook group. And let's grow and learn together. How can we win with our boss? Okay, I want to know as well, what are some issues that you have in your workplace, especially when it comes to workplace communication? Email me, jason@speakwithpeople.com. I can't wait for this series. It's going to be great. I hope you don't miss an episode. Thank you so much for sharing this on Facebook and LinkedIn. Thank you for writing a review on Apple or Spotify. Thank you for liking it. I so appreciate you, and I hope that some of these tips and skills were helpful for you to win with your communication with your boss. Well, thank you for joining us on another episode of the Speak with People podcast. We hope that you were encouraged. We hope that you were inspired and challenged to improve your communication skills. I want to thank you again for being a part of the Speak with People podcast community. Make sure you don't miss out on being a part of the Speak with People Facebook community group. Just head to Facebook, type in Speak with People, scroll down and join our community, because every single day we're encouraging each other, we're helping each other to improve our communication skills. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next episode.